Welcome to the Weird Works podcast. I'm Dr. Kristy, your host. Join us for conversations about alternative and sometimes controversial healthcare topics. This podcast will provide the evidence that you need in order to make informed decisions about your health, to empower you with the facts that you need to advocate for your health, and to encourage you that there is hope your body heals. Join us from experts from all things weird, as well as the testimonies of people with stories of radical healing who were once told that perhaps their condition was a death sentence, that they would just need to live with it, or that drugs and invasive surgery were the only answer. Let's get into agreement that if there is something natural and non-invasive that could be helpful, that it could be your first option rather than your last resort. Okay, so welcome to the Weird Works podcast. This will be recorded in audio and video on our YouTube channels. And if you're wondering where to find this topic as well as other lectures that we've posted, the simplest thing to do is go to our website, and all our social media channels are right there at the top with all the links for them. So tonight we're talking about a new offering that we brought into the practice. And it's kind of funny because I've surprised even myself that I'm the willingness to bring this in. It's just, this is about emotions. Neuro Emotional Technique is what NET stands for. And I don't know, you guys raise your hand or give me a comment in the chat box to let me know I'm not alone on this. But emotions are something that personally that I have stuffed, ignored, and even I say vehemently avoided in the past. Because why? They're messy, right? Does anybody think emotions sound scary? I know. You love them? Oh, good. Well, because they're necessary and you have to have them. So I think that's good to hear some people have some positive relationships with emotions. So, with my personal experience of trying to stuff them and just ignore them and avoid the emotions, what we know is what you resist in life often persists. And like in anything in the healthcare topics, what we tend to ignore can kind of come back and haunt you with a vengeance later on in life. And so we have to address them. And I'm excited to teach you about neuro emotional technique because it's different than anything that you might have tried or thought about emotional processing. So first, let's talk about why emotions are important in the first place. Well, lots of different, like whether it's chiropractic or traditional medicine or psychotherapy, lots of different fields of study have what they call a triad of health. And the triad of health is, you could think of it as a triangle, and it's something that practitioners use to try to explain why changes in one area can create an imbalance in the whole entire system. So if you think of a triangle, I'll get nerdy, an equilateral triangle where all the sides are the same, you can't change one leg of the triangle without changing all the other legs. So they're an equilateral triangle. All the legs influence all the other parts. And so this triad of health, we all call it something a little different. In chiropractic, B.J. Palmer, who was the founder of chiropractic, he said the triad of health was thoughts, trauma, so like physical injury, which makes sense with chiropractic, and toxins. So environment, that could be diet, things that aren't supposed to be in the body that get in the body. So in chiropractic, it's thoughts, trauma, toxins. In functional med and other holistic medicine, it's structural, chemical, or emotional. And then in traditional Chinese medicine or in other mind-body practices, they call it physical, mental, and spiritual. And the whole point is that it doesn't matter who you ask, emotions are 1/3 of our overall health, ability to express health. So they're super important. And so they're also often the 1/3 of the triangle that's the most often ignored. Because why? We were just kind of talking about that in the intro. I think because they can be messy, right? It can be unpredictable or uncomfortable. Often when we start processing emotions or we want to work on our inner child or work on childhood trauma or whatever method you want to talk about, unfortunately, fun, joy, peace, all the pleasant emotions aren't usually the ones that start to bubble up and need processing and need work on, right? So it makes us confront some emotions that we're not used to experiencing. So I'm going to tell you a little bit, get vulnerable, because doing emotional work does require us to get vulnerable. My own personal journey, how I discovered NET. And again, remember, like I only went to NET to save my own life, not really because I thought I would ever do it. And I've been super grateful that we have awesome practitioners right here in Jacksonville that, oh, emotions come up in the practice. And I'm like, cool, you're going to go see Dr. Meg or Dr. Kevin down the street. And then you're going to come back to me for all the diet and lifestyle and chiropractic stuff. And that's how we handled it for a really long time until recently. And so my first introduction to neuro emotional technique, I don't know if everybody knows my personal health story, but I had a breast cancer scare in 2018. And so when we talk about that triad of health, like I was already, to the nines, maxed out on what I could do with structural and the structural and chemical legs of the triangle, getting adjusted, doing exercise, sauna, detox, diet, lifestyle, stress management, supplements, all the things. But I wasn't addressing the emotional side. And I watched a documentary called Healed, which I highly recommend. It's about how people with all sorts of metastatic, like stage 4 cancers, have made these miraculous recoveries. And the documentary went around and studied these people who had these otherwise miraculous healings to find out what they were doing and what they had in common. And this emotional leg of the triangle kept coming up over and over again because I was like, I'm doing this, I'm doing that, I'm doing that. Okay, I can order more of this, da 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 da. And I was like, okay, if I'm gonna really take this emotional piece on, I was like, I need a guru. And luckily, we have Dr. Kevin Dieterman, who is a guru for neuro emotional technique right here in Jacksonville. And so I sought him out first as a patient. And I'll share his story too in a minute because it was just amazing to me. And so now he's a friend and he's a mentor because he goes around the whole country teaching other practitioners, not just chiropractors and alternative doctors, but even medical doctors and mind practitioners like psychotherapists and traditional counselors and social workers, this technique that I'm going to talk to you about tonight. So, like, he's the guy right under Dr. Walker who created NET in the 80s. And then the second time came up more recently why I sought out neuro emotional technique. And that was some marriage challenges that Scott and I had started going through in the last year. And I thought, gosh, for the amount of money that it would take for me to see somebody regularly and be a regular patient and really work through some of this old stuff that was resurfacing, I was like, I could just sign up for these classes as a practitioner and get to travel to some really cool places. So a lot of you know I went to Montana a couple months ago for a whole week, and that was awesome. We just did this technique on each other for 3.5 days straight, which I would never do to any of you and make you process that many emotions in that short amount of time. But it's super profound healing for me personally. But what happened is while I was in these classes, this is what was going on in the world. It was the girl was murdered, brutally murdered on the subway. That video was surfacing. It was the week of Charlie Kirk's assassination. It was 9/11. And while I'm there being vulnerable and processing these emotions, that's what's going on in our world. And I had one of those, again, I've had this many, many, many times in my career and life, that holy crap moment where I got that download that I can't just do this for myself. People need this, need emotional healing more than ever before in this upside down, crazy, backwards world that we are navigating and living in. And so I was like, I guess I'm going to bring it back to the practice. And we did. And we've already been working on patients. I've just been setting aside Thursday mornings, and it's already been super profound. And if anybody's on here that's done it with me so far, I'll ask you to maybe share what your initial impressions are so people can hear in real life, like what it's like. But people are loving it. And I'm surprising myself because having vehemently like suppressed emotions and pushed this away and just referred everybody, I'm actually loving it. And I think Why I'm loving it is because in a short 30-minute session, it's nothing complicated, it's nothing scary. People are, I think the patients are relieved to find out how simplistic it is and how much you don't have to really talk that much about the past and traumas. Usually the trauma that you think it is, actually, it's not even that because that's connected to something else and it's all raveled up like a ball of yarn and we start tugging and pulling on strings. And usually you're like, that's what came up? That kid from elementary school? I haven't thought about that situation in years. I can't believe that's what it's connected to. And so we'll explain a little bit about the neurophysiology. But usually the big scary thing that you're afraid to confront or talk about isn't even what we deal with in the session because we're just starting to pull the yarn and untangle this thing and start to discharge the emotion and the triggers, and it's just really neat. So anyway, I'm loving it. Patients are loving it. In a short session, you could tell they leave. My staff is like, they're a totally different person when they leave. Like they're just brighter and lighter and feeling good and they're laughing. It's pretty cool. So some of the testimonials, in addition to mine, this was Dr. Kevin's, and he tells us, so I'm not like sharing something like HIPAA compliant or anything, but he's a chiropractor. He's been in practice. He's had huge practices with lots of associates and lots of staff under him. Well, Dr. Kevin had back surgery. And so you're like, how could a chiropractor have chronic pain and chronic issues and end up having to have surgery? And he thought the same thing, and he was super frustrated. And what happened was, as a healer, as somebody who's used to being a business owner and taking care of not only patients, but also being responsible for the staff and this whole big organization and company, oftentimes people like us don't take time off. And there's this subconscious belief that in order to get a break or time off, the only time that could happen often is when you suffer a medical emergency and then you're flatlined. And so that kept happening to him until he finally found somebody that did NET and found the emotional link to his back pain, released it, and now he's well into his 70s. He's still practicing golfing, traveling the world, teaching this technique all over, and he's going full steam. And you can't tell like how old he is. He looks amazing. He's awesome. Another example of something that you might not think has an emotional connection is, say, like an employee. So, an employee naturally wants to climb the ladder, wants to work towards a promotion and maybe get a raise and has a certain dollar of income that have their eyes on that they want to make. But every time they come close, this self-sabotage comes in because there's a self-conscious connection or belief that in order to get to the top, that they have to step on somebody else and leave somebody else behind in order to get to the top, right? So there's this subconscious thing. So they never get there because something triggers from some earlier time in their life where they witnessed that, or it happened to them, or they did it to somebody else and they don't like the emotions that are connected to it. Another example of somebody could be somebody who gets sick every year around their birthday, or they get a headache, or they end up having to cancel birthday plans inevitably because there's some kind of health crisis. And that's tied back to disappointment from when they were a kid. Maybe they had parents who were divorced and there was a parent who always missed their birthday or never showed up or never gave them a call, or they were always disappointed because that parent missed it. And so in today's world, a coping strategy that the subconscious brings up is, in order to avoid that same old disappointment around their birthday, that they get sick so that it can be in their control to cancel the plans before somebody else disappoints them. Okay. So can you see how some of these things start to be connected and play out in life? Another example would be somebody who is experiencing chronic pain. Say this one is their symptom won't resolve and they've been doing adjustments, eating healthy, taking supplements, seemingly doing all the right things. It's kind of like the Dr. Kevin story, but their pain just won't go away. We did this with somebody. Well, their scapular pain, like rib pain, scapular pain in the back, wouldn't go away. It tied back to emotion of feeling held back as a 16-year-old, and it was tied to her dad, who was non-emotive or unable to express emotion to her. And so she was saying that this back pain, describing it, that it was preventing her from working out and it was holding her back. And it was tied to her dad not showing enough emotion back in the day. So it's just like wild and crazy how these things are connected. And all of these people were like, I can't believe that that's what it's connected to. And so we don't always remember it consciously. And we're going to talk in a minute that there's more than two types of your brain, but there's two main parts of the brain. And what NET does is tries to get your rational thinking brain that you're listening to me right now through congruent with your subconscious brain. Because what's happening in all the examples that I'm telling you is that, of course, I want to make money and rise to the top and be excellent in my field and take care of my patients and enjoy my birthday. My rational brain says all of that. But in each of these cases, the subconscious brain is like, I don't agree with you. And then this mismatch or misfire makes things not come out the way they could or be as effective or as enjoyable because there's a trigger. And then the trigger causes these spirals and these connections of emotions that maybe when we were younger and developed these coping strategies helped us back then to navigate pain and upset. But now in adult life, it no longer serves us. But the trigger is there, the reflex loop is there. And that's what NET does, is breaks that reflex loop in the subconscious brain. So let's talk about what it is, and then we're going to talk about, more importantly, I know I like the emojis. Keep them coming. I love all the comments and feedback because I feel like I'm really talking to you. I'm used to talking to you guys in the office, so yes, interact with me. I love it. So what is it? And then we're going to talk about what it isn't, because I think people are afraid to try it because they think they know what it is, and it's not some of those things. But what is it? I fell in love with NET a lot of times, like over and over again. That's how God does it, right? He's just like, I know you're resisting this. I know you don't want to do it, but you have to do it. And then he just keeps dripping on you and making it more and more persistent. So you're like, fine, I surrender, I'll do it. But I fell in love with it again because in the basic seminar a few months ago in New Jersey, it was actually the first time that I went to a training where it wasn't primarily alternative doctors and chiropractors. This audience of students was surprisingly mostly medical people. And the reason that that was impressive to me was because it was different. But what I realized is that that audience of people would never give this the time of day if it wasn't so backed in science and they didn't have the research behind them to prove it as an effective and worthwhile tool. So that really like lit me up, like, okay, they've gained so much credibility with the medical community because of the amount of science. And I'm going to share an awesome website with you guys in a little bit that I encourage you to go and read the science and watch a documentary that's on it. Um, what else is it? It can be performed, told you, by mind and body practitioners. So that audience, I sat next to a young psychiatrist, and I was so interested in how he was going to incorporate NET into his normal psychiatry practice. So we talked about that at length. It can be done by social workers, therapists, counselors, psychiatrists, chiropractors, acupuncturists. So anybody who has a license to be able to treat patients, mind or body. So it can't be done by somebody who doesn't have a license. So it is always by a licensed practitioner. So it's just simply put, it's a method of finding and then removing unresolved stress patterns that get trapped in our body or in our neurology. Okay, so it's just stress patterns that are trapped. And often what's interesting, and you'll see this in a treatment session, we actually trace it back to the original onset. And so the original onset is often before the age of 7. And that's because by the age of 7, if you think of it developmentally, by 7, we've experienced all of the emotions for the first time. We've kind of made our first impression of what love and conflict and different conversations and different relationships with different people look like and feel like. So that's cool and scary because if you have kids under the age of 7, you can start thinking about what they're being programmed with and their ideas. And none of us are ever going to get it perfectly right. So give yourself a little break and then just know that there's this awesome thing called NET that parents and children can all come to when we don't get it right and things get programmed that shouldn't. Um, but we're all susceptible for these stuck patterns. But I'm going to tell you a couple of situations where we are um, like especially susceptible. So when we're run down, when we're running on empty, that's when these stress patterns can get trapped in our body and our mind. When we experience any kind of trauma, and that could be physical or emotional trauma, that's when things start to get trapped and programmed. Anytime there's a loss of consciousness, so that could be from a trauma, a physical trauma. It also could be when we're under anesthesia, or if somebody loses consciousness from overdosing or self-medicating on alcohol or drugs. So those are the times when we're the most susceptible, right? So by the age of 7, as we're developing, that happens. But then again, throughout life, there's plenty of opportunities for new traumas to develop or repeat as well. And so what happens is that later in life, these stress patterns can get triggered by a situation that reminds our subconscious mind of that original situation. And so it doesn't mean that it's exactly the same people, of course, or it's the exact same scenario, but there's enough characteristics tangled up in that ball of yarn that look and feel sensory and memory wise like the original thing, and then it triggers this stress pattern and it connects it all together as if it was the original event, and then you have this like not appropriate response later in life. Does that make sense? I think everybody's tracking. Okay, good. So, well, like I told you, yes, 100%. I know we always have the smartest audiences, right? You guys are awesome. But if you're not tracking with me, please do tell me, and we can answer questions along the way too. So while those stress patterns were helpful at coping, like if you were in a childhood trauma situation and you learned to shut down because it wasn't healthy to share emotion, or every time you shared an emotion, you were shot down or put down for it, and you just learned to like, I'm just gonna weep to the side and keep to myself and keep my mouth shut. Like that would be a coping mechanism that's helpful back then, but in life it doesn't help you because now you're not speaking up, you're not speaking your truth, you feel repressed, you might be resentful that your voice isn't being heard. Like it can lead to all sorts of unhealthy habits later in life, like frustration. It can affect your relationships. It can lead to self-sabotage or extra stress responses like irritability. It can lead to isolation and loneliness. And then it also can lead to, in the most severe cases, to like depression, self-medicating, drugs, abuse like that. What else it is, why our audience loves it and is comfortable with it, and often I think relieved once they come in and try it for the first time, is that it uses muscle testing. So that's really cool because you guys know the power of muscle testing, and the muscle testing can help us confirm that we're on the right track and that we're not just making up a story that isn't really the original trigger by putting extra words in your mouth or paraphrasing something that isn't true. Has anybody ever had that done to them? Have you ever been sharing something and then somebody repeats it back to you, or they comment in a manner that you feel like, no, that's not what I said at all? Has anybody had that happen? Yeah. And how does it make you feel? Is it frustrating? I do. Do you speak up or do you just let it go? I'm curious. So we know with the muscle testing to make sure that we're not doing that. We're not paraphrasing, or we're not taking your scenario and making it something different. Yeah. So, and then it uses muscle testing along with acupuncture meridians, and each of the acupuncture meridians are tied to very specific emotions. So we can use all the muscle testing in the meridians to find out what emotion is connected to this old stress pattern that's stuck. And then we can do a really simple thing. Like all you have to do is hold the meridian. So there's meridians on your wrist on both sides. And so we'll tell you what meridian it is, and you're holding the point, and then you're holding emotional points that are on your forehead. And you're breathing through while you're thinking of this snapshot of the original event, which we help you formulate during the session. That's it. It's not scary. It's like overly simple. Like it's kind of cool. So what is it not? So it's not psychiatry. And it doesn't replace psychiatry. People still can do NET and have their psychotherapy or counselors, but this is not that. It's not talk therapy. So what that means is that you don't have to just keep talking through it and revisiting it. Because I think that with anything, we talk about medicine and now we're talking about traditional therapy practices. There's a time and place for everything. And I always practice by that premise, no matter what realm we're talking in. There's a time and place for both, and this doesn't negate the need for therapy or that you can't do that. I think it is helpful in a lot of cases to have somebody to talk to, and therapists have awesome strategies and coping mechanisms and techniques that they can teach you to do on your own when you're home away from the session. But this is just different. Like when you leave, whatever we worked on is discharged. So there's like some instant satisfaction to some of this too. And what a lot of patients of NET have commented on is that they often feel and report that they're able to accomplish in just a few NET sessions what it took them years and sometimes decades of traditional talk therapy alone to unravel. And we have some science and we have some evidence of brain scans and heart rate that I'm going to share with you that show that. Like you literally can measure changes on functional MRI in the brain within 3 to 5 sessions of trauma centers being turned on and off, which I guess I should just do that now since we're talking about it. I go off script. Okay, so here I'm going to share my screen. So on the top, what you're looking at, these are functional MRI studies again. So in figure 1, what you're seeing is the amygdala and the hippocampus. And these are typical centers in the brain that would indicate trauma. So these are trauma patients. This is what their brain scan looked like before. And then in figure 2, this is what their brain scan looked like after 3 to 5 sessions of NET. And you don't see any of that red amygdala or hippocampus. And so those are areas in our old brain that are trauma response centers, and the amygdala is fear. So that's super cool. And this is why medical people give credibility to this, because they can see the imaging and the scans and the research. Here's another one that shows heart rate scans pre and post NET. So this is a heart rate variability graph, and you can see here around bar 6 that it goes off the charts. And they're saying a sentence. So in NET, you would say what we call a personal declarative. So in figure 1, they are saying the stressful sentence. And then after the session, you repeat it and you no longer get that physiological spike or stress response in a heart rate change. And there's scan after scan after scan showing these cool things. So that's just a little representation there. Other things that it is not, and I love to address this. It's going to sound funny, but it's important because um, I'm a Christian and a lot of our patients are Christians, and I think it's important for people to know that we're not dipping into the spiritual like realm, that we're not calling on, weird influences or false gods or spirits or anything scary like that. This is nothing in that realm whatsoever. We don't have to revisit the trauma. There's no risk of putting somebody into a PSTD state, and it's not scary and it's not complicated. So now what I want to talk about is who is NET for, and kind of how does it complement what we're already doing with the other cool stuff here at Health by Design. So it's really great for anyone, and I've started muscle testing my chiropractic patients if there's any areas of like unresolved tension or pain. So that could be in the body, back, joint, neck. It could be jaw. We've done a lot of TMJ stuff because we clench, right? That's a natural stress response. Sometimes people are clenching all night long while they're sleeping. They're supposed to be in a parasympathetic state and they're like tight even at rest. And tension headaches and migraines go along with that too. So think of chronic pain conditions that are not resolving, doing seemingly all the right things. Another great thing that this is good for is inexplainable health conditions. So, I mean, people kind of already come to us for that anyway, like been, I say poked and prodded, bounced around, seen specialist to specialist, no answers, no evidence. So inexplainable health conditions, like it's a very simple muscle test to just see if there is an emotional component related to any of the above. So it's just something we could check out. If you are coming in for your normal NET or chiro, you're like, hey, Dr. K, can you see if there's an emotional component to this chronic pain or tension or this rib that keeps going out? Absolutely. So it's super easy to see if you're a candidate for NET when you're in the office. But if you're just listening, here's some other things to think of, or think of for other people on behalf of other people. Um, Chronic conditions that keep resurfacing. Sometimes we don't put two and two together. We just think it's frustrating that this thing just keeps coming back over and over again, and we don't necessarily realize like we're in a stress season or like it's always around a conversation with a particular relative or family member or something like that. So things that keep resurfacing, or like if you feel like you're roller coastering, like you get a little better and then the thing comes back, and then you think you hit another milestone and then it comes back. So roller coastering, or if you hit a plateau on your health program. So that could be weight loss, it could be setting personal goals, just hitting a plateau where you get frustrated because you can't seem to get, no matter what you do, get past a certain point. Self-sabotage. So we talked about, the job and the promotion, but what about self-sabotage on a health program? Like how many people like start losing a couple of pounds and they're on the right track and they start eating healthy and clean up, and then here comes Thanksgiving, here comes birthday. And okay, so what? You ate the cake and you had the stuffing, the thing happened, you did the thing, enjoy it, and then don't self sabotage after. But sometimes it's not that easy, right? So then it's that like, oh, I ate that yesterday, fell off the wagon. What does today matter? And then on we go. Other self sabotage is also related to taking supplements. Like maybe you're not really forgetting to take your supplements. Maybe there's a self-sabotage component that every time you start to hit a certain mile mark in your health, that you subconsciously lose your pill tray, or, forget to take half of your stuff, or you can't seem to remember that midday dose. That could be self-sabotage. Not always, because we're busy and things happen, but just ask, like, just look at it. Destructive beliefs, our racing thoughts, that's really super common because we see a lot of people with like thyroid and adrenal fatigue. So, the thoughts that keep coming, especially you can't quiet your mind at night, the thoughts just keep coming. Feeling overwhelmed or overstimulated. So the brain is literally trying to process too many things simultaneously and can't get into that restful state. Phobias. So if there's any irrational fears and phobias, NET can be a helpful thing. And then think of just patterns of chronic stress. So chronic stress patterns, if you just like Google this, would be high blood pressure, weakened immune system, especially if your immune system always crashes during the high stress season. So if you have a job that has like seasonal stress, or like you always like salespeople have like end of month quotas to hit. This is also common with students. So a lot of our students are going to come back for holidays and we stay open so we can see them when they're in town. So we're looking forward to that. But they come home and they've just gone through finals or some kind of testing. And then they're like, oh, I'm so annoyed. I spent my whole vacation with the flu. That's a stress response. That's a weakened immune pattern that as soon as their body lets off the gas after a stress pattern, that they crash out. So that's something to consider. Depression is another sign of chronic stress. GI issues, super common. We see that all the time. So we can actually test now to see if there's an emotional component to why it won't resolve or it keeps coming back. And then heart racing and heart palpitations, which has been on the rise post-COVID. But again, we could always see if there's an emotional component as well. Skin conditions, we don't always think of skin being an emotional thing, but when we're in a high stress state, that's when the body will express stress in a not helpful way. So some of your histamine issues like hives and itchiness, that could be a stress response, which could be an emotional tie, excuse me. Feeling of just feeling numb, stuck, or detached, right? So that's a stress response. You start to literally like try to detach from the situation because it's so stressful. It's a coping mechanism. But it doesn't have to all be negative stuff. So what's really cool and kind of what's been part of my evolution through NET is I told you when I first went, it was for like, okay, I need somebody to help me save my life because there's a triad of health of like, there's this emotional pattern that like I'm literally helping myself get sick and staying suppressed and being a workaholic and putting myself last at my body's own expense. That was the first experience of it. So when I went originally, I just did whatever Dr. Kevin. I'm like, I don't know where this is coming from. I don't normally feel emotions. I just check and move on and do the thing. So he had to really help me back then because I was like, I didn't even have vocabulary to talk about emotions. And I'm not even kidding, you guys. I had to buy like the emotion wheel and put it on the top of my laptop to start to get vocabulary so I could like express what emotion I was feeling and like actually connect with them. So some of this doesn't come naturally depending on what your upbringing was. And so that was save your life, like just do the thing and tell me what I need to work on. And then, and more recently, sometimes I would be a willing participant and go in with an intention and really have, kind of thought through some of my stress triggers and brought it to Dr. Meg. Dr. Meg took over for Dr. Kevin eventually. And then some days I'm just wiped and I'm like, I don't know, do the thing, like tell me what your body knows what it needs. That's what's cool about muscle testing. So if you're just like kind of fatigued and you're like, I don't know, I didn't give it much thought. I'm not really into this. Just help me. We can do it that way. But what's really cool is now that I've worked through a lot of the old, childhood trauma stuff, and then working on more recent stuff. So all the 7-year-old and earlier stuff, and then it's like, oh, teens, and now the 20s are coming up. I'm like, that's more recent, interesting. But now, once you get through all that kind of stuff, you can even do it for making sure you're congruent with your goal setting. So, like, we could muscle test you saying, like, talking about what your goals are, if something you want to be okay with, like, maybe you want to be okay being able to talk to your boss without fearing that every single time they call your name or call you into their office that they're going to share bad news or fire you. I'm like, I want to be okay just having a normal conversation with my boss. You can actually set an intention, or it could be even for high performers. Like if you have goals and you want to break glass ceilings, whether it's business, athletics, or personal goals, we can actually work on that to make sure that your subconscious is congruent with the goals that your rational brain is setting. So cool. Such really cool stuff. So, if you guys want to kind of see videos of this being done, and you want to read some more of the research, there's a really cool, I'll put it in the chat and then I'll pull it up so you can see what it looks like. Oneresearchfoundation.org. And that's also where you go to find the documentary, the stress documentary. Like there's some really specific research. The most recent one is groundbreaking research on chronic pelvic pain with NET. So this is all for women's health. Really awesome stuff. Part of my background is healing from endometriosis. That's actually how I got into the holistic health world. So if you or somebody you know loves all the research, you can click these buttons and go through all that. But this documentary called Stressed, everybody should watch it, and it'll give you a much better understanding of what NET is and how these stress patterns get trapped in the body. And this will just bring up a YouTube link for you. So highly recommend that. The other thing that I want to share, and I'll put this in the chat in a second when I get out of the screen share. If you want to take a quiz, you can go to this wellnesscheckonline.com, and if you fill this out, it'll get emailed to me. You can put my name in there and it'll send it to me, or you could print it out and share it with me. in your office visit. And what this is going to do is it's going to grade the health of your different meridian channels. So we'll get a little bit of a clue on what emotions to start working on. So if you want that to get sent to me, that would be awesome. And then I'll have it for your initial appointment if you want to try it. And that's kind of what I've been encouraging people, just come in for the initial session so you can see what it's like and see that it's not scary. See if it, floats your boat and you like it and you find it helpful. And in that session, then we can have a one-on-one more about like how you could use this going down the road or what, beyond your initial session is going to look like as well. But like I said, a lot of people they're loving it. They're finding that it's an immediate relief. They feel better. They go back to life and they're already telling me that they're not responding as negatively. They're not as triggered in the same situations, following that same week. And we can do it on kids too. I should make sure that you guys know that. We've got little James is a cutie. He's been doing it. He said he's gonna do a little video testimonial for us. Today we had an emergency situation in the middle of a normal chiropractic visit, and I was like, I'm not going to let this person suffer. They were in the moment. They were there with an emotional trauma, and we just hooked them up and did the thing and sat there and breathed through it. And her mood was completely lifted, and I didn't even want her to drive the way that, like, she was so upset when she revisited this trauma. And so we did it, and she left, and she was awesome. And the staff was even like, yeah, she was like a different person when she came out during her checkout process. So it's quick and efficient. It's just really cool stuff. I can't say enough about it. And again, I'm shocked that I love it as much as I do and that I even want to do this in the practice. And that's just a total God thing. When he lays it on your heart, you just have to be obedient and do the thing, right? So that's how it is. I know I see the head bobs. Yep. Okay. Well, I don't see any questions. Yes, fill out your surveys. Awesome. I look forward to having those come in my inbox. And like I said, please let me know if you want to come in on a Thursday, and then we'll send out info at the beginning of the year on how we're going to roll it out. So this has been another episode of the Weird Words podcast. Thanks for joining, everybody. Have a great night. Has a lot of the research